a cheese butty and a pint of best bitter. And what better time and place to eat me ploughmans than here on a farm that produces much of the ingredients, malting barley and wheat, and it's been a difficult harvest, but now it's safely gathered in. But things are going to be a bit different this year because Manor Farm in Yorkshire have accepted my Buzz of Biodiversity challenge. What they've got to do is produce the food we all depend on, while at the same time making Manor Farm a better place for wildflowers and wildlife. It's easy for me to issue a challenge, but these are the guys who've got to make it work. Marek Nowakowski, an agronomist, has been developing wildflower margins at Radcott Bridge Farm in Oxfordshire. His work has shown it is possible to put the biodiversity back into farming.
We've travelled 10 paces from where the farmer started drilling and spending money. I'm now at the beginning of where he will start to earn a profit. Everything behind me has been a direct loss to the farm operation.
Manor Farm is an arable farm of 120 hectares, producing cereals, oilseed rape and winter beans. The challenge to Marek and the Manor Farm team is to prove that increasing biodiversity is possible without reducing farm profits. Now, if I've got it right, in this field, and it's quite a big one, 50 acres, the bulk of the biodiversity which interests me is squeezed in along the edge here. And in amongst that, there's some pretty nasty things, alien annual weeds, which all the time are trying to get into the farmer's crop. It's a continual struggle. So come on, tell me, how are you going to solve that? Keep the farmer happy, but put the biodiversity back.
What we're going to do, David, as you say, the majority of biodiversity is squeezed into a tiny area. What we're looking at is extending this area with a mixture of grasses and flowers that, by being perennial, stop the spread of annuals. It's going to be a barrier around the edge of the field that will stop the drift of farm inputs into the hedge, which in the past has produced problems.
We know from past experience that these field edges yield less. So let's disregard that from a crop point of view and let's have a look at increasing the biodiversity in that area.
There is only one countryside. It's got to feed us, and we need to step up the biodiversity. Starting on the edge of the field, it's least impact to farmer, and if 80% of the biodiversity is on field edges such as the one we're looking at now, if we can improve that field edge, the biodiversity must go up.
You know, I'm beginning to believe you. I hope I lose.
It's decision time now. We have somewhere in the region of 6 or 7 herbicides to choose from, and everything has to match for the performance of each herbicide to act the way we'd like it to act, and that's remove the broadleaf weeds, remove the grass weeds and prevent the competition. We're looking at some pests which are evident here, some slug damage there, and on this leaf in particular we'll see some flea beetle damage. The amount has to be assessed as to whether treatment is worth carrying out.
What we've got is last year's brome, blackgrass, wild oats have dropped their seed. In this case it's young brome. It wants to spread into the farming area, and the farmer has got to stop that happening. So this, if you like, really is the agri-environmental battle line. We're in field 6. We've just finished sowing this particular experiment. It's 36 plots. And what we've sown is a mixture of grasses and wildflowers, one of the mixtures we've developed. It contains oxeye daisy, yellow rattle, corn cockle, cornflower, a range of annual and perennial species. Farm chemicals will be used on farms, and we're testing the survival of these sown species against modern farm chemicals so that we can put a mixture together that is safe when the farmer goes spraying should these margins catch any drift.
Are these mixtures all the same then, W30s?
Yeah.
Have to mix it with a quantity of barley meal so it spreads out evenly across the plot. That degrades. The only thing it might do occasionally is feed the odd slug, so we've got to be careful. We need to get this one finished because the forecast is for it to rain, so we need to get the seed on and it rolled in, so that at least the small seed has contact with the soil and can germinate. Phil has rolled everything and he's coming back
To roll this one?
any minute now to roll this one.
Right.
By which time we should have finished, and that's everything rolled in, so we're then back onto the seed box.
Yeah.
Now, Chris Wrigley, how detailed is your information, say, field 8?
Right, the basic facts are we know field 8 is going into winter wheat this year. We know it's 9.24 hectares, and we know the nutrient status of that field on a square acre basis.
But do you know how much it actually produced last year in terms of crop?
We can actually bring that field up again and then produce a yield map from last year. We've then got to investigate that field and look at the reasons why the yield was different in different areas.
So you know how much fertiliser you put on last year, and you can sort of gauge how much you have to put on next year?
Absolutely.
Chris, it's okay you having all that information in the computer, but how do you use it in management of the farm?
Quite simply, David, we download it onto a disk. That disk is then transferred onto the machine that's going to spread the potash or the phosphate.
I don't think I'm quite ready for this information technology bit down on the farm, but as far as I understand, all the information about this field, good bits, not so good bits, and the bad bits are on this disk. Now what happens?
Right, quite simply, this goes into the machine and it translates the information off this disk into the computer on the machine and variably applies the fertiliser.
But how does it know where it is?
That's the magic of the satellite. Global positioning.
So that's real good news. Have you got anything better?
Oh, we've got one better yet. What we've got here is the fertiliser is driven by air and is expelled at these points along the boom.
So same pellets?
Same material, and they come out of these outlets. This then stops it going into the hedge back.
Marvellous, isn't it? And remember, part of the challenge was to produce a good crop. And here, with all this technology, they're doing just that, putting the chemicals in exactly the right place. But I wonder how old Marrick's getting on. Well, the crop's doing well, despite the slugs, but what about this bit?
Well, the sown bit doesn't look too good. I think we've got a lot of slugs in here. This is ideal slug habitat. That grows quite quickly. It's now completely out of danger from slugs, but I think the slugs have moved on to our sown bit, and they look as if they've given it a fair degree of hammer.
So this was planted with the wildflower mix?
Yeah, it was sown with a mixture of grasses and flowers, and there are 1 or 2 bits of grass showing.
And the rotten things are eating them all up?
It's called biodiversity, yeah. The bit we want, they're eating. That is fescue, at the same age as barley. Well, you can do a lot of damage there very quickly.
So the slugs have had a feast, but on field 20, it's a different story.
What we've got is a field that's going into spring barley. We've prepared this part of it early, and we've sown 2 demonstrations here, one looking at mixture types, one looking at management techniques. So what we'll be able to show people is the selection of species mixes and the management to get the best of both.
Now this was planted the same day as the slug catastrophe. Why no slugs?
The situation here is that the slug pressure isn't as high, therefore the slug damage isn't as great. If this was next to oilseed rape like the other one, we'd have the same problem again.
So nothing for them to hide under when the sun dries them off?
These are the fescues coming through. Things like the golden oat grass, the crested dog's tail will be on its way, and some of the early flowering species are coming in. Obviously a lot of poppies here. Most of what we can see are poppies. That one, oh hooray, look, cornflower.
Oh, wow.
Cornflower coming.
But wow, crested dog's tail hates competition. There's lots and lots of nutrient here.
Well, we're going to manage the competition. But yes, it's a fertile site. The skills that are needed to know how to mow, well, not how to mow, but how often to mow and when to mow, will give more things a greater chance rather than just chucking it in and letting it get on with it.
You know, you're either a total nutcase or a blooming genius.
Well, time will tell.
So this is the tussocky plot. Now, what's going to make the tussocks?
The tussocks are going to come from these slightly thicker grasses. When they get up, they're cocksfoot, when they get up above the rest of this understory, that'll stop the weeds coming through. So we'll have like a 2-tier system, an understory of finer grasses and then the tall tussockies. Obviously we're a long way from that happening, but this is what it looks like 1 month after sowing.
So the challenge is up and running, and apart from a few slug problems, it doesn't look bad. December, and the work turns to other areas of the farm.
Really, I think at this time of year, what we've got to do is just keep up with what we've got. Field 8 won't have changed.
Field 8's just coming through. I mean, soil temperatures are a bit lower, but that's coming through okay.
And the slugs?
Slugs in field 16,
hopeless.
They've been a right swine.
No, I mean, down at home, the slugs have been on the cereals, a nightmare. Has this been sprayed?
No, we've got no herbicide on yet whatsoever.
And slugs in here as well?
We just had a bit of grazing, but they haven't been too bad.
Got away with it?
Yeah, we've just got away. See how the soils run together, though? I mean, it's less than ideal for slugs.
It's ponding there, isn't it? Look.
The plant's almost having to survive in sort of anaerobic conditions, isn't it?
It's more like rice, isn't it?
Well, we could have sown rice and got away with it this year, I think.
This is from what, P&K?
No, we just put some Avadex headland, Avadex granules on the headlands. Just
what?
To...
But kept it off the margin?
I certainly kept it.
Margin.
Don't worry. I kept it off your margins.
Keep it off my margin.
Trust me. We've just made this slightly wider, haven't we?
Yeah.
And that's I guess, just to take that 6-metre buffer zone away from
I mean, if we're going to take people up and down this margin, demonstrating this as a buffer zone, as a means by which we reduce the herbicide drift from field to watercourse, then it's more sensible to walk them up the edge here, rather than have them either in the crop or on the margin.
Yeah.
But in a real field situation, these two would meet properly.
Yeah.
So what's happened here now?
Nothing at all. No regime. This is really...
This is uncut.
This is the control.
The control, left alone.
Yeah. Plot 2. All I've done here, as per the instructions, is take the top 12 inches off and cut the sides.
Right. Right, so this is, 1, 2, this is the third then, isn't it? The third treatment. Topped and sided.
Right, Marek. This is what I term aggressive. I've taken this down to between 8 and 12 inches, something like that. Yeah,
taking it right to the ground. This is the bit that concerns the public. We've coppiced it. From here, it'll bush.
Yeah.
And over time, this will most probably give us the thickest and best result. But at this stage, it looks pretty dramatic. Well, what we've got now is a really firm base. The hedge now starts here, so all the bits you've left will bush out.
What do you want it is, Mike? A greenfinch?
Oh, excellent, we started. Yeah, that must be a finch's nest of some sort, look. 4-year-old hedge, first visitor. Excellent.
Smashing.
What we've got to do now is get the weed control right for the season. We'll end up with a bit of dead grass. I don't think that's a problem.
We can get rid of that,
No.
That's no problem.
And what you're going to do is lay this bit.
Yeah, we're going to get this done before Christmas, Marek, as soon as we can get at it now. Almost a corky bark on it.
Strong bud.
Yeah, real strong.
February. The crops and the margins are still sleeping. But now is the time to plant hedges and create new wildlife habitat. Spring 1999, a deluge. Rivers burst their banks, fields flooded, and the local town was submerged for a week.
What occurred in February wasn't too bad, although it tended to, all this rainfall here we see in February tended to fall at the time when we least needed it. And therefore, as far as farm work goes, field work goes, it fell at the wrong time for us. And of course, with regard to rainfall, we've had something like 3 times the yearly average, and it just knocked every bit of farm work on the head.
But at the first opportunity, the team are back working the land, checking the margins and preparing for drilling. Then the great British weather declared a false start. But eventually things got underway. Spring work began in earnest.
Farmers using chemicals are often accused of damaging the countryside. Our research has shown that on many occasions where weed pressure is high, chemicals can remove the weeds in favour of the sown species. The experiment behind me is looking at 9 farm chemicals and what out of the sown desirable species lives after spraying and what dies, so we can put mixtures together that are safe if farmers need to use them.
The nitwits. Mind your head on this, look.
These are the flowers that you saw upstairs. Right, there's a poppy, there's a shepherd's purse, there's the grass coming. See, little bits of baby grass.
You join to those 2 sticks so that if a trout has to eat one to eat the, it's got to eat the sticks as well. You make the glue and he sticks himself.
My finger is there.
Oh, what is that?
And the two water shrimps, a big one and a small one. In fact, I think it's a lady and a gentleman one.
Why are they stuck together?
Well, they're in love. So what we do at the end is we always put them back in there, because we wouldn't like to kill them, would we? So what have you got in your lunchbox? Now look. Chocolate. Now, do you think they could have grown chocolate on this farm here in Yorkshire? No. So, apples? Do you think they grow apples?
Yeah.
Yes, they can grow apples. And you've seen how the farmer, the agronomist, we mustn't say farmer anymore, must we? The agronomist is helping to put the, what's my word? Biodiversity. Well done. The biodiversity back. So it's what, late April? There's nothing here at all, so did the slugs win?
I'm afraid the honest answer to that, David, is yes, they did. Obviously, the pressure from the slugs from both the hedge and the crop met in the middle and destroyed the margin.
So destroyed our nice crop of perennials. But why haven't they destroyed the crop?
It's the speed at which the crops grow. In fact, what's happened is the crop's kept on top of the pest rather than the pest keep on top of the crop. The crop away in this margin was so slow that the slugs were able to take it.
So is it catastrophe? What's happened?
Well, what we've done is we've come back in and re-drilled it.
Ah, so you replanted all the wild flowers again?
Absolutely.
Natural regeneration sounds like a great idea. But where a margin is concerned, sterile brome is the arch enemy. This experiment shows why. Come on, you're not just cross about the slugs eating all your flowers, are you? What are you doing?
Well, no, I mean, this is hopeless. It's no use to anybody. Look, we might have lost over there, but, I mean, this is a disaster.
So what, the annuals are moving across?
Well, yeah, I mean, everything we don't want is coming that way. We lost to the slugs over there. Not even the slugs could stop this terrible stuff.
That's real tough stuff.
Oh, it's hopeless. Yeah, I mean, what we wanted to do was to show the difference between what the farmer does battle with annually and what we were going to create perennially, once and once only. There's a scientist here by the name of Bill. He's studying everything with a Latin name that creeps, crawls, flies.
This is the very beginning, and we come back year on year to find out how things are changing. Our job this year is to do a baseline survey of the farm so that when they develop the habitats for wildlife, we'll be able to see how far we've come. I'll be looking at all the groups that I have expertise in, which is plants, birds, butterflies, moths, small mammals, and carabid beetles. Each of those groups has its own accepted methodology. Birds, we're using the BTO's Common Bird Census. Pitfall traps for carabid beetles. We're following IT's butterfly monitoring scheme transect methodology for butterflies. Small mammals, we're using Longworth traps. There's traditionally an antipathy between farmers and conservationists. Conservationists think maybe that farms aren't interested at all in wildlife. In fact, I've found that very few have no interest at all, and it's really been inspiring the way that the lads on the farm have taken an interest and learnt the names of some of the things I've shown them.
So what we've got is a sown margin. We've run into problems, as you can see, coming in the field. The whole place has gone underwater. But what we can see developing down here are the perennials we've sown, and the annuals have a blazer colour now and then gone. But it's the perennials year after year after year that we're trying to get through now. The crested dog's tail, which is in the mix. This big tall one running up here is a fescue. So we've got wild carrot developing down here and all the various bits of grass. It's this understory that we're looking for. So what we're after doing is taking these taller annuals out of the way with mowing to let us right through down to the bottom of the canopy, which is where all the sown species are starting to develop, and we need to give them light by the removal of the annuals above them. So this lot in time will last for many, many years.
One area that we've had discussion on, maybe even conflict on, is the area of ground that we take out to implement Marrick's work. I don't want to take any ground off production if it's in the category of high production, and I want to aim Marrick's work at areas that we don't necessarily gain year on year high productivity from.
So by creating different habitats, this one is a 6 metre wide man-made meadow. What we're keeping is the farming operation away from the watercourse, creates increased biodiversity, satisfies the legal requirements of Mr. Farmer not spraying within 6 metres. A fish covered in your brief.
Ah, one of my wellies is leaking.
June, flaming June.
What's going on in the crop, and can you do anything? What is the seed mixture which would then be appropriate to put onto that?
One of the biggest problems, of course, is making everybody aware of the work that you're doing, and particularly with a subject like these environmental issues, we've got to come to the point where everybody is at least singing from the same book. It might not be from the same page, but they've got to be starting to sing from the same book. And all these minds that were brought together, certainly as far as farmers and some of the scientists, they were impressed with the work that we're doing. They've added things to it, they've suggested things, and the work will evolve over time and things will be added and taken away to, at the end, produce a product which is of benefit to our customer base and farming in general.
One of the main things about coming here to Radcliffe is actually to see the practical use of field margins, and certainly another thing that was very interesting was the herbicide treatments in hedge bottoms and such like. So you can actually, rather than having a scorched earth policy and wiping everything out, you can choose herbicides that will allow you to keep certain species of grass and what we might term weeds, I suppose, which can be beneficial to the environment. I particularly like the idea of the margins here, and something did strike me as I was walking across this field, that maybe we could plant our footpaths that go across fields with this type of mixture and just actually see what happens. I think that would be particularly exciting. We're under a bit of pressure, are we not, from the public, if you like, to sort of farm responsibly. They like to know where things come from, but they also like to know that we do look after the land, and if we can put something back into it in the form of maybe some margins to help the wildlife, it's very much an environmental issue, I think, as well. But it's what I feel comfortable with. I don't think I'm particularly comfortable with wall-to-wall wheat that is produced in sterile conditions with no chance of anything else surviving.
Well, this is a male barn owl. I call him Poppy. I hand-reared him since he was 8 days old. And I use him really to educate children in schools and show them a live barn owl. Field margins provide food, and they act as a corridor which barn owls can then hunt and utilise.
We're all told to go green, we're all told to take care of the environment, but actually putting that into practical terms on a farm, because if you actually just mow out 6 metre margins and put nothing in it, you'll end up with all the competitive annual grasses that are no good as a habitat, are no good as a food source, and they'll just take over your farm. So you actually need some guidelines as to how to go about it, which is what today does in a really practical form.
Here they're advising farmers to use machinery that they've already got on the farm, chemicals that they've already got on the farm, so they're not telling them to do anything different than they do in their day-to-day life within the farm.
Visually, you've actually got a really good mix of species, so you can actually drive past or walk past and think, wow, I've got wildflowers, I've got wild grasses. It looks attractive, and it's a benefit to the farmer in terms of managing his species and reducing his weed bank, but also in terms of the rest of the countryside in terms of food for wildlife.
It's not just a load of rhetoric again, is it? It's not something that we're being told to do. We can actually come here and actually see it working, and I think that's what I like. It's very easy to go to the shows and what have you and see a small plot that may well have been planted only the week before, but to actually come onto a farm where the owner has allowed it to happen because he's interested in it as well, I think, yes, it fills me with a great sense of I'd like to do this, I'd like to do something like this and carry it on.
I reckon we're now done till harvest. Right, okay.
Barracuda's my agronomist. He advises me on the arable side of the farm, but he and I share an interest in conservation, and he and I, between us, have really sort of developed the conservation on this farm, the idea of the meadows, the hedgerows, the new plantations, the new woodlands. We've established to date about 40 acres of wildflower meadows, and we have 3,000 metres of new hedgerow. And we've got 10 acres of new woodland in addition to the existing woodland of 350.
Well, it's spectacular. This was a field of winter wheat. It was an arable field, and it's now just this amazing visual picture of wildflowers. And the effect is just absolutely phenomenal. And I think that this could be what you're seeing on field margins throughout the country. And clearly there's huge advantage in terms of enhancing biodiversity in flower sources, in places insects are feeding, birds are nesting. And considering that this is almost equivalent in costing to the set-aside options, given the choice, I would think most members of the public would far prefer this wonderful, colourful vision than to see some of the set-aside fields that are dotted around the countryside at present. We have always had a strange relationship with farmers because we've been seen as the bureaucrats, the bringers of bad news with our special sites of scientific interest. I think that those days are changing. I think we hopefully are listening more to farmers. We certainly want to learn from them, and rather than go along and say, this is what you must do, my attitude and our attitude is always to go along and say, this is what we'd like to create. Work with us and help us to create that. You have the skills. We know what we want. Let's work together on this. We do need to restore not just sites, but restore landscapes. My first impression of walking round that corner, this is just staggering. Your average member of the public would be bowled over. This is what they would want the government to pay farmers to produce.
This isn't a miracle. We've farmed this using the skills that Andrew's got, the bit of skills that I've got, your management skills. As a team,
Yes.
This can be done in most places. But the policymakers have got to want it, the public have got to see it, then it'll happen.
Financially, the wildflower meadows give me an income very similar to set-aside income. But for the same amount of money, I just feel that I'm putting a great deal more back into the environment, into conservation, by growing the wildflower meadow. After 10 years of this, my advice to any farmer thinking of taking this up would be get professional advice. Make sure you're putting the right seed mix that will suit your soil type, the acidity, the altitude, everything else. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and your money.
So, set aside or provide. This shows that wildlife habitat can be created pound for pound and give agriculture a new direction for the 21st century.
The indigenous weeds that Marrick's got at Redcar, we don't have here, and vice versa. So he's uplifted his work, he's brought it to Manor Farm, and he's been presented with a whole new range of problems.
David, last autumn we were kneeling in these tiny little plants within the plots. What I want to do is quickly show you we've broken down, if you like, the different management options. This one has been sown with sterile brome and flowers and left to its own devices, and it's basically tearing itself to bits. This one is even worse. Many farmers throw fertiliser beyond the crop edge into the margin, so this one has just gone very high in nutrient, collapsed and become sort of a soggy mess.
So the annuals like the poppies and the nasty grasses you don't want. So it's
No, I
gone
mean,
wrong.
these love it,
Yeah.
but there won't be a year two. Now this one is the marriage of selective herbicides and mowing. All the perennials are in here, so it's the farming skills with a bit of mowing, with a bit of spraying. This one next year will dwarf them. We're going to leave this for 2 years. Those will be a mess. And this will be a 15-yard block of blazing colour.
Perennial.
Perennial.
So unless you worked it out right for the farmer could get it wrong and increase the problem.
I believe that this is a crop, the same as that. The skills he has to manage this, he's got down to a fine art, and we help him. These are the skills that we've developed so that this crop can be managed successfully with the skills he's got on the farm.
Well, you know, Paul Marrick's got a problem because to the average punter, that looks great, full of colour, but it's also full of the very things the farmer doesn't want in amongst his crop. Now, they don't look very good at the moment, but look, we've got salad bonnet and, self-heal, doing extremely...
Can I butt in? There's 26, we've counted them, 26 different flowering species in here and about 4 in that one.
So when this lot comes in, I have to give you 10 out of 10 for this and 1 out of 10 for that.
Well, 1 out of 10 would be generous, David.
So this was a bit hammered by slugs. You've replanted it.
Yeah, we've sown it in the spring.
But are you having to manage this now?
Yeah, there's still a lot of annuals in here, David. We've got all-seed rape, we've got scentless mayweed. We've got to get the perennials through the annual dominant stage. Otherwise, we're not going to get the perennials, which is the bit we've sown, which is the long-term bit. The colour at the moment is all different shades of green. We're not seeing the insects responding to the flowers because we've had to mow this, I think, 2 weeks ago. There's one that survived birds foot trefoil.
Lotus, bacon and egg.
He'd survived the mowing. No, I mean, mowing now will give us all the colour in next year. The perennials are here. They're going to be at their best when we've got them through the annual phase into next year.
We're in field 16. The crop as it stands at the moment is approximately 2 weeks away from harvest at a guess. We've had 1 or 2 problems this year with weed control, and that's borne out by the messy appearance of the crop with these weeds poking through, but that's not going to be too detrimental to yield, and we're quite happy that this crop has a reasonable potential.
Well, seeing is believing. Now remind me, exactly what was the challenge?
Mine was to increase the biodiversity on the farm.
Mine was to maintain farm profitability.
So we're going to wait, what, 2 or 3 months till you've done all that boring paperwork, then you'll let us know.
You've got to be patient, we'll let you know.
Now, Malik, I'm amazed. I mean, they're all here. The perennials, self-heal, corn marigold, corn flower, lots and lots of bees, other insects, and I can hear the skylarks. How do you do it?
Well, David, it's part of tomorrow's farming.
I've just taken a walk round 120 hectares of the farm, and I can see and I can hear that the buzz of biodiversity is back, and that makes me very happy. But this also makes the farmer happy, because in a normal 2-year period he'll put down 36,000 kilos of muriate of potash. But now with precision farming, the right amount in the right place, he's saved 8,000 kilos, and that makes 22.22% saving. Good news for the environment and good news for the farmer's bank balance. Now, did I get it right?
It's the end of September, and I'm in what's affectionately known as the slug margin. What we've got to do now is cut it. We've got 1 or 2 annual species that the cutting will take care of. Nice and short, put to bed for the winter, and everything will be really good for next year. It's not been an easy season. We've had a lot of wet weather. The margins certainly have a base of flowers in. They're not yet as mature, therefore as species rich as radcut, but I feel very confident that not only have we made progress here, we've recorded the progress. Certainly from the figures that ITE have produced in the first year, we've increased biodiversity. But the crop and the margin are now meeting, and apart from a bit of autumn spraying, we're now where we need to be, getting set up for the following spring. I'm very encouraged by the breadth of the whole thing that's happening, and I really believe we've set the thing up to go forwards in a very positive way.
Last September we concentrated work on the margins, the perimeter of the fields. This year we've taken the same sort of concept and moved it out into the middle of the field to create a biodiverse, environmentally friendly island. This area in particular exists on this very sandy, low nutrient status soil. We've identified that through soil sampling and yield mapping. One of the main benefits we have when we look at this new technology is to be able to identify these areas on the farm. Another major concern of an arable farmer is traceability. And in order to achieve traceability, every single input into a field has to be recorded, and therefore it has to be retrieved. And one of the ways we're looking at to retrieve that information is by the use of this retrieval apparatus. Anybody that has any input onto the farm, their names are recorded. Every individual operator on the farm is designated a button, and that button will contain that particular person's name. The tractor will be designated a button, as will the implement that's going to be used, as will each individual field. and it's then a simple matter of recording that data to touch each button in turn. Once the information has been retrieved onto this, it's downloaded onto computer. So here, for instance, Ken Brown on the 23rd of the 6th was in field 9, the crop is winter wheat, and he was actually on that occasion using the Kawasaki quad to apply slug pellets. We're testing using the NitroCheck for nitrate levels in the water. Permissible levels in tap water are 50 parts per million. Commonly, by looking at this watercourse running through the farm on a fortnightly basis, we're getting readings from between 25 to 35, 38 parts per million.
Sustainability is about today's generation taking what they need without compromising future generations. And finding a link between food production and the environment is a vital part of that process. And our business is not just about inputs for growers, it's about the quality of food production that we're involved with. So we're helping farmers manage the process of producing food. So, you know, if you encompass the whole process, then it's pretty important that UAP understand the implications that process has on not only the grower and the consumer in the food chain, but also on the environment in the process.
Didn't Marek get a bit of a pain in the neck when he first sort of popped up with these ideas?
Well, Marek's an enthusiast, as you found out. He gives us all energy, he gives us all a broader thought process. You know, he takes us away from, you know, what our job used to be into what it's becoming. Doing the right thing for your customer is really what business is all about. You know, and our customers need to meet those requirements for all the right reasons, so helping them do so is enjoyable and pleasurable.
We've turned full circle on this lovely winter's morning. And as far as biodiversity is concerned, well, I'm happy because the UAP team have won. But what about farm profits?
Let's run through some of the figures that I've produced. We already know that the main aim is to sustain agriculture, and we have put an awful lot of work through technology recognising the areas of the farm that are less productive than we'd like. So in other words, on this map, the red areas are those areas which are loss-making.
So it really isn't worth farming those areas and doing all the things you have to because you could make a loss out of the red bit, but the green bit's worth putting your big efforts into.
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
Right, got it.
What I've done here is taken a single field, field 8 on the farm, and look at that field in 1998 before any environmental issues were impinged on that field.
Yeah.
And then I've taken the same field in 99 with all the environmental work that we've done on the farm imposed on that field and looked at the figures again. And if you look, the income in 99 with environmental work has actually increased above 98. The cost between 98, no environmental work, and 99 have actually come down, and it's cost us less per tonne to produce, albeit the price of the product had gone down in 99, but it's cost us less to produce a tonne between the 2 years.
It's not just what you do on the farm, is it? It's what happens in the whole of agriculture.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we have to put up with the price of the produce that we sell, and it has taken a fairly sharp decline over the last 2 years.
You know, that's something we never think about, isn't it? You put up a challenge, and there are lots of things outside the challenge between him and me which can actually affect the profitability of the farm. So you've done immensely well by just edging it up.
Yeah. We feel pleased with the way we've done. To some extent, the costs of establishing these margins has been met by the countryside stewardship payments, and these grants have made an appreciable difference to maintaining farm profits. The subsidies gained from the environmental parts of the farm, together with the crop value, we've still made a profit.
So you'll have done as well as all the other farmers in competition, but improved all the other parts of the farming. Yeah?
We can see here the reduction of £39.60 per hectare, less inputs.
That's almost unbelievable. Did you think you could do that?
Well, no, I didn't, to be fair. Not to that level.
Is that good news for the waterways? Good news? Very good news, except for the bloke who sells you the chemicals. Has he gone grey-haired?
No, he's not. I mean, we've used chemicals still to produce the level of crop we have, and the chemical distributor, one of which I work for, has to be satisfied with that level of inputs.
I didn't think the biodiversity bit was possible, but that's amazing.
Well, there are the figures, there's the proof. So we have reduced inputs.
Well, none of you think that was anything to do with me at all. I just thought up the challenge about biodiversity. All the other good news has come through from the fact that this farm knows about its farmland, knows about its roots, and put good practice or invented new good practice in farming. That is quite fantastic. Well, you won. Never been happier about losing anything in my life. Wow.
Fresh sandwich.
Gosh, and cheese to go with it.
Yeah.
Just like the old days.
Yeah, like a year ago. Anybody else?
Oh, Marek, the beer's good, the bread's good, and the buzz of biodiversity is good. But what do ITE tell us?
David, this is the first lot of information that's come through. 3 new butterflies. Marbled white, small copper and small heath. Now the habitats we've created, rich in pollen and nectar, brings these onto the farm for the first time. They must have been in the area years ago, but they found us already. Skylarks. We've taken the skylark population up 800%.
If you do that all over the countryside, we'll all be having to put our fingers in our ears.
Well, yeah, the buzz of biodiversity, yeah.
And of course, if they're there, that means all the creepy crawlies and things there, which means all the plants that they feed on there, so you're getting the whole food chain built up.
Well, I think the exciting thing is that ITE have still got a bit more number crunching to do.
So we may have even more good news.
Yes, I think the good news is just going to keep coming in, but there is one bit of good news you haven't yet seen. I want to show it to you.
What, right now?
Yeah, right now.
You would, wouldn't you? Better finish your beer up.
Can biodiversity on this farm be increased by implementing Marek's work on an island within a field? Does it have to be linked to a margin? Does it have to be linked to woodland, for instance, so that there is an avenue on which wildlife will travel to the island? We don't know the answer to that, but we'll find out this coming year.
An island, a corner, round trees, all bits farmers don't want. We've got a 3 metre tussocky edge, Chris?
3 metres, yeah.
3 metre tussocky edge that stops here, David.
Yeah.
And then we've gone on to a herb-rich mix.
Just see the beginning. This has taken this piece of ground out, which has been very difficult to farm. From a sort-out point of view, from a profit point of view. There's no point in us having it in production. It's better put down to this.
If every one of our farmers was to plant a 2 metre herb-rich strip, we would create a new 43,000 hectare nature reserve. I really think that this is an opportunity where profitable farming and practical conservation come together to make a massive environmental difference in our countryside.
A marker for the future way to farm. Farm this bit for wildlife and that bit for production. Waste not, want not. Expand that to the whole of Britain and we're winning.